I want to say welcome to you, Eric, Jerry, Harrison. It is so lovely to have you all here. I have to say this is a conversation that I wouldn't say I've been excited about having, but I think it's a conversation that we need to have. But starting off, let's talk a little bit about your presentation, Harrison, and why it's so important to have that here.
Yeah, well, the Real Talk Race and Real Estate Room was one that started on Clubhouse on MLK weekend in 2021. And it was just a group of leaders that said, hey, can we create a space to have conversation and get to the lived experience that the media was starting to talk about, that was starting to come up in other popular conversations, but had never really been synthesized ever from an NAR group. So we are excited to be able to bring something that was just a Clubhouse conversation on, quite frankly, I'd say salacious, but a challenging, a difficult, a charged topic to the main stage. So it means a lot, and I'm grateful to President Charlie Oppler and the leadership team this year for making space for something that was extremely emotional and raw and uncomfortable here, because I think realtors need to know and talk about the lived experience of both people of color in the business doing it and what is still a lived reality for Black and brown folks all over just trying to live and buy real estate and do regular things that have these impediments and negative things that happen to them. So we're going to talk about it, engage people on it. We're actually doing a hybrid, interesting thing where we're going to do the Clubhouse room live here and still be on the Clubhouse app at the same time. So we ask for some grace and patience. We're going to figure it out. But I'm so excited just to first be back in person and to be back in person with such a great and personal topic to me. And, you know, space for these gentlemen and place for us to connect. We've talked online a lot, but I've never met in person. So I'm most excited about this piece of being able to see each other in person. So.
Absolutely. So you touched on this. So I'm going to come back to you on this one. Monday Night Clubhouse. Yes. A lot of people don't know what Clubhouse is. It might be hard for you to believe. Yeah. But tell us a little bit about that hybrid thing that you're doing and what Clubhouse is.
So Clubhouse is, the best way to describe it is it's like podcasts in real time that allow real-time audience participation. And it was something that I believe in the fall of 20 really got going. And we created this space and conversation in January this year. But it's just another social connection platform that is voice only. And it's so interesting about that because multimedia-wise, we got, you know, our HD videos and all the pictures and all the things. But when it gets down to just voice only, the emotional parts of it and how you are focused and you have to listen is just why I think it took off so much. And we were trapped in the house during pandemic, so people were like, I need something to do in the other times. But yeah, Clubhouse is an awesome app for connection, voice only, but we are bringing a live component of what was just a voice only conversation before.
Fantastic. And talking about the conversation, Eric, you know, if you can touch on the fact that race is still a problem when we're talking about housing equity, when we're talking about being a real estate agent, you know, just talk about some of those key things that you've witnessed in your profession.
Well, I'm certainly a lot more aware of it since August 1st. I think that for the most part, we practice and we're used to practicing or even just living as people of color. And some things we just assume and accept as just the way things are sometimes. Like the guys here and the gals, I'm sure in their daily practices, they've, I'd say, been profiled, probably not earned business because of our race. Some of those doors aren't open to us. So that's the daily part on a large, very visible scale. And what happens is because our society has these types of ideals ingrained, then it just trickles into places like law enforcement, school systems. Our children have to worry about this stuff, and it's not always intentional. Sometimes it's very much unintentional, but it's still a part of who we are as a society, and it affects our business. And it's something that forums and platforms like Clubhouse keep that awareness high. That hey, this is an issue. There's thousands of people that have been on that platform to share their emotions and experiences, and it is very powerful. And when you leave that podcast, you think about that for days. You think about that for days, hearing those stories. It's very important that we don't suppress what's happening to us as minority practitioners, and that we keep that voice out there because we need the non-minority practitioners, right, and leaders to listen to that, to understand that, so we can start to create some change.
You became the story, right? It's not just talking about being Black and being an agent. It affected you personally. Tell us about what happened.
The incident itself or the impact and effects of it?
Oh, both.
Well, the incident itself was, well, it was almost by chance. Literally 8 days before my incident, my run-in with the police, our run-in with law enforcement, there was an incident at that home where a supposed squatter was arrested. He wasn't a squatter though, but he really liked that house. Let's put it like that. He was pretty much stalking the house. He had called, at least in his words, he had called the sign, spoken with the listing agent who referred him to for pre-approval, which he attempted to do that, but he couldn't stop driving by. One day he drove by, it's a vacant home. Door was open, it's unlocked. Well, that's illegal. He can't go in there, but he did. For that reason, he was arrested. No violent history or anything like that, but that's the background and the setup to what happened to me a week later. As when I arrived with my client, the neighbors thought it was him coming back.
And he was black as well.
Yes, and drove a black car. Those are two things that were very similar between he and I. He was a black man, I'm a black man, and we both drive black sedans.
Do you look alike?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No. Kind of recapping or going back to your question as far as the role of race in real estate, this is where the profiling thing becomes a big problem. Like you were certainly profiled. There was a conversation that the neighbor had when she called with the dispatch, which now I know is called a silent dispatch. All right. So someone's supposed to just come check on you. Well, then we hear more footage of the officers assembling themselves and dispatching themselves in a very aggressive and forceful way with somewhere between 5 to 7 patrol cars in response to my real estate showing. So it's a sad set of events, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail at 3 o'clock. But yeah, this is a big part of my life now. So the impact, the effects, right? My whole family just basically went through this, right? Because I went through it.
Of course.
Yeah, they say if you're married to a realtor, you're a realtor. Yeah, you're whatever you think, you're a realtor. So
let me ask you this: so you used the lockbox to get into the house.
Correct.
You were with your clients going into the house.
Correct.
You were showing the house as you would any other time. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do wrong?
I think we know what I did wrong. Yeah, I showed up with the wrong skin tone.
And so guns were drawn.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, the architectural design of the home is it's a Cape Cod, so it has no front-facing windows. And the second level, you can only see the garage and the neighbor. So while they were assembling themselves, and kind of like if you see movies, and it's like a bank robbery, it's a standoff formation where the cars are pointed towards the house in the street, and the streets are blocked on both sides. So it's about 5 to 7 cruisers. What tipped me off is that I looked out that window, and Samuel, Roy's son, who was with us inside the home that day, was in the basement, and I looked out that side window and I saw the posture of the officers with weapons drawn. But we can't see the front, but we can only assume we can see that 2 officers with weapons drawn motioning to each other to go around the back side of the house. Who knows, it has to be at least 4 times as many around the home. But we couldn't see that. So right away, for me, it was, okay, we're about to be hostages because someone's outside, like Jerry was, someone's outside, and they're gonna flush this person into the home. My client, who's like a brother to me, I've known him for 30 years, and his son's, I'm like an uncle to his son. So instantly, it's like, how am I gonna tell Roy, who's a military veteran, retired military veteran, his son is in danger 2 levels below us in the basement. But similar to Jerry's story, once we were able to get their attention. Roy was able to get their attention by yelling through the window, and which we thought at that point we were likely to get shot. Because once we had the attention of the officer, he turned in such a way and he pointed his weapon at the window, so Roy threw us down. He understood this could go very much wrong, and my son's up here now. At this point, Sammy has run upstairs and warned us that there were a lot of police officers outside, which Roy still didn't believe it until he looked out that window and saw them with the guns. But yeah, then you hit that landing, you come down to where you can now see outside of this home, and you realize the gravity and the level of danger that you're really in. And that's when things go really, really wrong. When you're when you're when self-preservation is a thing, right? And the fight or flight piece goes away, and you can't hide after that, right? You can't fight, or you will die, right? You can't run, you'll die. You can't turn invisible or become unblack, right? And all you can do is comply and hope for the best. So that's the acute trauma piece that happened to us, and that's what we're working through with therapy and counseling to try to, as this moves from acute trauma to PTSD, right, into the post side, and how these things can affect you, have to be dealt with. Otherwise, I'm much less of a realtor, much less of a father, much less of a whole person if we don't get some repair. And those are the types of things we have to worry about by being minority practitioners in this industry. Because I've been joking around because I have to joke sometimes, but now I realize I'm in the most hazardous work environment ever.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
This is the most dangerous job in the world.
And you didn't have to think about it that way before.
Never. Right.
When I think it's a shaking to your core, your normal mode of operation, to say, like, I know I have to be more cautious as a black man showing up at different places, different times, and they can't always tell with me right away because of the color, but it's in my calculus. And that was the biggest and most powerful part of your presentation, and yours as well, Jerry, is people in the room here, and Tracy, they just can't believe. They're like, wait, but no. Some people are like, no, it can't be that bad.
And what's weird about that is we were having this conversation last night, because fight or flight, some people, and depending on their nationality, never have to worry about the consequence of fight or flight, especially flight.
I will take it a little bit deeper. I mean, your parents tell you when you're growing up that this is a possibility. This is what you do. I mean, that's a conversation my parents had with me. You know what I mean? When I grew up in New Orleans, the conversation when I was growing up learning to drive, my mom said, you do not stop for a police officer. And I was like, well, what do I do? Like, what do you mean I don't stop? And she goes, you drive to a well-lit area, a gas station, a grocery store. Like, those were real conversations. You never expect it to happen, but those are real conversations. When you're black, you got to be careful. Yeah. You are treated differently. And Jerry, you had a similar experience, no?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And that Eric's situation happened in August of this year. My experience happened in November of 2018. And I mean, a lot of the similarities were just, that he mentioned were there. Just on my way here, coming to do this broadcast, I was talking to some realtors who was at the convention, and I mentioned why I'm here and what I'm doing. And their reaction is, that's not something they think about, you see? And that understanding and our reality is so disconnected that the message needs to be told. Because one of the issues for me that really deep moved me was that I expected more from our organization when it happened. And don't get me wrong, realtors and realtors, because I'm a realtors member too, it's just another thing, but all over the country was reaching out to me and calling and, emailing, to saying things that really kind of was inspiring, and that's why too, when I received a call from Eric, this is a traumatic experience. It's not something that just goes away. In my experience too, my son was with me. He was in the car, and I didn't bring him in the house, which will be a part of the 3 o'clock story I tell. But it was just so traumatic, and with all of the events and police officers waving their gun, and to try to communicate that to fellow realtors, you think would be they could say, oh no, but they can't even fathom that. They just don't. It's like
That's
you in a cartoon or something. They don't see it as no reality in it. And that in itself is why, like Eric, we standing up and speaking about what's happening and what happened to us. and that was out of everything that I took away. I think the unhuman, like I didn't exist, from the police and just they whole, like they didn't even talk to me. It was just, handcuffs, police, gun, siren, it just, no connection at all. And I'll say it was probably 6 to 8 officers there. And out of 6 to 8 hired professionals, because we're professionals. What we do as realtors, we're professionals. And so I expected the level of professionalism to be there. And no acknowledgement was kind of like, wow. That's why in my video, I didn't say anything. And that was, you spoke about the parents, and that's part of my 3 o'clock speech. And that conversation happens in Black America at a rate, probably used to be 50%, but the climate we in today is 99%. You get that conversation in Black America about how to make it home safe.
Right.
Right. And what used to be on that conversation your parents waited to give you was about the birds and bees. Not no more. That's a close second. Right now it's just surviving what happens when law enforcement is encountered. And we got a, society to show the history of what people jogging to smoking a cigarette to anything else. And it's just phenomenal. And about Clubhouse, I got a text from one of the NORM members about getting on Clubhouse. And my daughter forced me to get to iPhone. And so you could only get on Clubhouse at one point with iPhone.
Yes.
And so I finally figured out how to get on one Monday, and they invited me when Eric was there. And prior to Eric speaking, just hearing the conversation on that Clubhouse was shocking, because it was so open. And people was just saying what they feel, and anybody could say what they feel. I was kind of open when I saw that.
Well, I think that's why it's important to have the conversation. Why, as you said when we started, this presentation is so important, and it's for everyone. You know what I mean? Because we do have to have those conversations, Jerry, where everyone is open, everyone is talking. And is this what we're doing today?
Yes, it's a continuation. The idea is the space created for not just people of color to share their lived experience, but for others, right? Allies. We talked about the need for active allyship to be vulnerable, be honest, and actually understand here is like, because it's beyond just saying like, Eric, I support you, Jerry, I support you. Right. It's like, no, I hear you, and I actually better understand how screwed up what you've had to go through all the time was in general, but how traumatic that one event was. And now because I know it, right? Because once people know something, they have to make a change and do different. That's been the most powerful thing to me, and what our room can do and will continue to do is create a space to pull people into like the actual knowledge and the human connection. And like you talked about, you're being dehumanized by where officers just reduced you to, you are a professional, you're a father, you're all these other things. There you were just a threat that had to be neutralized with deadly force possibly. Mm-hmm. And nobody can feel or know what that's like until it's articulated so well, including like, whoa, that changes how you operate, walk around, and think. So when our fellow professionals hear it and the space we create, the follow-up conversations, and I assume it's happened with y'all too, where people come and say, man, I'm both so sorry, I want to know more, how can I, now that I know this, what can I do next? So it's been a whole progression. First it was just make a space to hear, then it's like actually listen, now it's like what do you do next in terms of action in our spaces to make a difference.
I'll tell you what, one of the things too I got from that, other realtors saying, oh, it happened to me. I just didn't say nothing. I was incarcerated, I was appraisal, and I just got so many other stories that became like, what? Oh, I'm glad you said something. And in different spaces. Even I had one of my bankers mention about somebody in property management that worked for him that was, had some issues. It went to areas and levels that I just didn't imagine.
And like Harrison saying, that awareness piece, just having that platform to have so so many people from all over the country just pour into that. It's just amazing, right? It's amazing, but it also is sad. It saddens you a bit because they've been suppressing it. They've been suppressing it, and they just need an outlet. It's like you just pinprick on a balloon, and boom, there's 100 people saying, "Look what happened to me." And here's why I didn't say anything. I was afraid of being a target. I was embarrassed. I felt guilty. I didn't think my broker would support me. Victim, the blame. Some people had left the business. They're on Clubhouse. They had completely quit because of it. And I've spoken with people outside of even Clubhouse, hundreds, just since August. And they say, "Hey, you're very courageous. You guys are very courageous." And I didn't really understand it. Courageous. And I'm speaking with my wife, and I say, "Well, I wonder why people are calling me courageous." And she says, "You're probably about to find out." Yeah, you're probably about to find out. And then it became one of the things to where I did have to be careful with working with new clients, people I didn't know. I had some folks that I know had some bad intentions, try to get me on showings. Maybe they're pro-law enforcement or pro-government or pro-guns or pro-whatever, but the mission was to get me on a showing, and it wasn't going to be pretty. But I can also speak to, Jerry mentioned, the question was about local associations, real estate organizations, and how did they come to the table? And you'd be surprised. In my case, in West Michigan, they were paralyzed. They just didn't know. It took a good deal of time before leadership there reached out, and they're like, "We still don't know what to do." Right. We still don't know what to do. Is there anything actionable? Of course, we're going to support you, but they were frozen because this never happened to them before.
And I'd like to speak with that, if it's okay, about NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and this platform. Just the opportunity to express ourselves, because as Eric said, that happened to me in November of 2018. I didn't hear nothing from our Realtors Association locally that I'm a part of, that I've been paying membership and dues to for the last 30 plus years. That's why when I got an invitation to come on Clubhouse and with a NAR background, it was like, for what? For me, just like too, when we was over here, one of the gentlemen says, "Oh, you got a pretty big payday." Let me say this, and it was never about the money with me, never. In fact, my agreement, the lawsuit I filed, and in the city I filed, my agreement included the area board of realtors and my realtors group, the city and their police officers, for us to have open dialogue and training in this space.
Well, I think this is first off, I think you're all courageous, just for the record, because like you said, you never think of the implications before. You don't know what it means to be the first to speak out. In your case, you were the first way back when, and you're continuing the conversation. So I would say that does take courage, right? But I think it's a conversation that we have to have, which is a part of the courageous part, right? Having the conversation so that NAR knows this is what we need to talk about. This is what should have happened. People are paralyzed when they don't know what to do, where to start, how to talk about it. So we're talking about it now, and I think that this is the beginning of something, hopefully, that will change minds and change lives so that this does not happen on a regular basis. So I applaud you all for even speaking up and telling your story and having the courage to do that, and having the courage to have a presentation in a forum for other people to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you.